Have you always felt like you're living between two worlds? I actually think we all feel like this. And I've been thinking a lot about this recently because I was thinking the other day about how we, I don't so much experience this too much anymore because I refuse to be anything but myself in all aspects of my life, which has only really happened recently when I started to really uncover this inner ache that would show up whenever I would be in experiences where I would be holding up this artificial version of myself that I needed to be to fit in. But I've been thinking lately, like, if I create my own reality and I am attracting people into my reality that are on the same frequency as me, which means I'm in a reality of people who I'm aligned with, that means that the people who I'm aligned with, who I think I need to hold this fake version of me up because they don't understand what's going on inside of me and the knowledge that I think I've untapped inside of myself, that we're so much more than we pretend to be. That means that those people are doing the same thing. So we're all actually pretending to be these limited versions of ourselves so we can fit in with a reality that we're all creating for what? It's like we're all co-creating. It's like we're all co-creating that Muggle world in Harry Potter, but we all know that we're from Hogwarts. But when we come together in public, we're like, yes, we're all these limited beings. But then when we're in private, we're like, God, that's draining to pretend that I'm that limited and to pretend I don't know about all my abilities and how powerful human beings really are. Why are we all still pretending? Why are we all still pretending to be muggles when actually we know we're all from Hogwarts? Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I kind of I kind of get why it is, because when people who are like 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s, we were really born, we're like the generation that were born in this really in between two worlds time. Like when I was young, we didn't really have technology at all. And technology has taken a quantum leap in my lifetime. Like we now have access to things that I could only think that they might have in Area 51. Do you know what I mean? Like we now have access to things that we saw in the movies that we were like, whoa, that's fake. That could never be possible. And now we have it in everyday life. So when a lot of us were born, we were born, as I said before, like I truly believe that, well, it's obvious. Babies are born with the most upgraded version of human consciousness without the baggage from the past. So they're kind of like the brand new iPhone. They've already got the updated software. They're already this upgraded human being. And us older folk kind of have and so when we were born, in like the 80s and 90s, we were born with this upgraded kind of understanding about technology, kind of just like born in a sleeping world in a way. And I think all children really are born in what they perceive as a sleeping world because they're born with the upgraded versions of human consciousness, and they're born into these families where they just simply don't quite understand it yet, or families that are kind of still very much in these programs of the past where they're limited. And so roll on, a couple of decades time, and now we're all in our like 20s, 30s and 40s, and we still have this kind of essence of being between two worlds because we're so used to not truly showing up in reality as our most evolved self. We're so used to kind of being, we were so conditioned into these family systems where we had to suppress our inner knowing to make way for the adults who kind of we relied on for survival. And they said stuff like, don't be so stupid, or you don't know what you're talking about. And they kind of suppressed our innate knowledge, and so we suppressed our innate knowledge to try and fit in because we had to survive in our family systems. We felt like we would be rejected, or we literally felt like letting our inner knowing out would be death, because it kind of felt like that. Because if we were rejected by our parents, when you're a child, that does mean death. You rely on them for your life. They gave you your life. You rely on them for food, etc. When we become adults, we end up being in these between two worlds. And I think a lot of people who are born with these hugely advanced gifts end up being addicted to things because they have all of this energy inside of them, all of these knowings inside of them, they just simply don't know what to do with. And that's why when I see like addicts, like alcoholics and people who are addicted to drugs, I always think like, what can't you cope with? Because these people can't cope with how much power is inside of them that they don't know what to do with. They're in a world that doesn't yet facilitate the power inside of them, or didn't facilitate the power inside of them when they felt it coursing through their body. So they looked to drugs or alcohol for these kind of consciousness suppressing or altering substances that helped them suppress themselves into these suppressing realities where they just simply did not know what to do with the energy that was running through them. But these people, they one day they come across yoga or breath work, they come across something in their reality that calls them into it, that speaks home to them, and they start to walk that path. And as they start to walk that path, they start to feel the two different worlds that they've been focusing into being. The one that they relied on for their actual survival, the one that they created so they could survive in their life, begins to crumble to the floor. And they stop being able to hold up the facade that they've been holding up their whole life. And then they keep doing their breath work and things like that. And even their breath work begins to clear out all of these old beliefs and definitions that they've stored in their nervous system for their own survival. And then all of these stories start to be released from their nervous system, all of these beliefs, and they have to confront a lot of their old programming. And that is really quite a difficult thing to do, because quite often things can come up and you have to see through the illusions of them, and then things might happen, like you might experience a lot of grief because of the lost time, or you might experience a lot of anger because of how you allowed yourself to be suppressed in that way. And then you might have a lot of self-forgiveness to go through. And then, it's a whole process that a human being has to go to when they really stop breathing life into the artificial version of reality that they assumed was their survival reality. And in a way, it was their survival reality. It was where they felt like they were in fight or flight and they had to be something to stay alive. And suddenly they let go of that, and they keep dropping into the authenticity of who they truly are, and they stop having to hold up two worlds, and they suddenly start slipping into one world where they can be authentic. But none of it makes sense, because in the other world, everything, their limiting beliefs kind of drove them. Their limiting negative beliefs and their fears were kind of what drove them to do things and make decisions. And without those, they no longer know how to make decisions. And so they're now in their most authentic self, but they just don't know how to live from that premise. They don't know how to live from pure love. They've never actually allowed themselves to experience a reality where love is the key, love is the core, where they can actually follow their heart in everything that they do. And suddenly they start feeling like they're not as empowered as they used to be, because they don't have all of these fears that are driving them and that are heightening their stress responses that they used to be addicted to. And therefore they feel like they're losing themselves and they're losing their brain, and everything starts to get very convoluted, and that's when they go back to the old version of themselves and they start breathing life back into the old limited planet they were building and creating, and they keep pretending to be that old version of themselves because they cannot quite cope with how it feels to be authentic in the world and how it feels to follow love, not fear. And then they keep going through these cycles where they go back to the old world, and then they're like, oh no, but I do want to live as my authentic self. And then they go back to trying to be the authentic self, and they kind of start chipping away at the old stuff again. And then they say, oh no, this is too scary. I feel like I'm losing too many people. I'm losing my mind. And then they go back to the old one. And you kind of keep cycling between these two worlds until one day you say to yourself, well, if I love meditation and I love breath work and I know what makes me feel good now innately, why do I keep slipping back into the old? What is it about me that means that I keep slipping back into the old way of doing things? Why do I keep slipping back into this program where I've convinced myself that sitting on my sofa, sitting on my phone, watching TV is actually what I do for pleasure? That's not what I do for pleasure. And then I look forward to actually doing the things that I love. What is this program that has me convinced that that feels good, when actually, if I think about it, it doesn't make me feel good at all? And then you start to break through the programs that convinced you that they were where your pleasure was, but actually they are where you cause more stress for yourself. And then slowly you start to really build in your most authentic self. And you start to realize, oh, I want to be around these types of people. I no longer have any motivation to keep up this facade. And then suddenly they allow themselves to just do the things more frequently that bring them genuine joy. And then suddenly their world starts to change around them, and they start to allow themselves to be unapologetically themselves in everything that they do. And they start losing people, and then they have to process those relationships, and they have to forgive themselves, and they have to cut through all of this red tape about what it means to lose themselves and what it actually means to unconditionally love. And they start to actually say, okay, well, if I just fill up me, if I just focus on being the most loving human being I can possibly be, if I focus on just being my most authentic, wonderful self, who is here for the greater good of all, who wants to stand in my truth so that I allow others to. I have to accept that life will move around me and will shape around me in the way that it's supposed to. I have to accept and I have to trust that the people around me will either change or move, or something will happen where everything will begin to make sense. And it will. And I have this saying that is, don't try and change everyone else. Change you and everyone else will change. And that is the key. Stop worrying about everybody else and stop worrying about changing the world around you. It all flows from within. It all flows from inside of you, and it's going to change when you change. When you stand firmly rooted in your reality, where you are the most authentic version of yourself. And even if you mess up, you understand that you messed up because things are processing and you're learning from this new perspective, and you're not going to get it right straight away. You're going to have to get it wrong sometimes. When you're discovering how to be your authentic self, when you've had these two worlds, when you stand on the world where you are finally letting yourself be your most authentic self, you might find that it's like being reborn. They're like a brand new little butterfly that is literally just broken free, who's remembering how to fly. You're remembering who you truly are, and who you truly are, you're going to be having new experiences. It's like you're restarting, you're becoming new, and you have to allow, just like a child, you have to allow yourself to make all of these mistakes as your authentic self, so that you can evolve and grow from that authentic self. And you've let go of all of those artificial timelines, all of the beliefs that were never yours, all of the limitations that were never yours. You've let go of all of those, and you've let yourself rise like a phoenix from the ash. And as the ash falls off you, your colors begin to flow through. And then the people who are supposed to find you, your authentic tribe, begin to find you. And suddenly you remember you can fly, and you remember all of these other things that you could do. And then you are being your most authentic self. But it wasn't easy to get there, but it was so worth it when you got there. And you no longer have two worlds going on. So things manifest so quickly. Abundance begins to flow so quickly because your energy isn't split anymore. It's completely focused in this one reality. And then everything has changed, and you've moved into this amazing world where everything makes sense. Everything makes sense because it's coming from your truth. It's no longer scattered between all of these things. It's coming from your eagle eye focused truth. And that is where we want to be. And it's not an easy journey to take, but it's worth it. And let me know your own experiences in the comments. I was going to go to the whiteboard, but I guess I didn't need it for this one. That was kind of a bit of a lecture. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comments. I hope this was helpful in some way. I don't even really remember what I just spoke about. Anyway, lots of love.